ChatGPT said, "They told us not to go inside, not to step beyond the broken wooden door where the air itself feels alive, where whispers bleed through the walls and shadows breathe beneath the floor." They said the Arnold Estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island, was cursed, not haunted, cursed. A place where the living and the dead exist in a quiet, suffocating war, and those who enter leave with something clinging to them, something ancient, patient, and merciless. It began in 1971, when Roger and Carolyn Perron moved their 5 daughters into the old farmhouse on Round Top Road, a place that looked peaceful in the daylight, its weathered wood glowing under the sun, its fields stretching endlessly. But even before the last box was unpacked, the house began to whisper, as if it had been waiting for them. The children were the first to hear it, faint voices calling their names from empty rooms, laughter echoing down the halls, doors opening slowly on their own, the smell of rotting flesh drifting in waves through the kitchen, though no animal corpse was ever found. And at night, the cold seemed to crawl out of the walls and into their beds, wrapping around them like invisible fingers, whispering secrets that no child should ever hear. At first, they tried to ignore it, thinking it was an old house creaking, but the signs grew darker. The broom went missing and appeared days later in another room. The clock stopped at the same time every night, 3:07 a.m. The dogs refused to enter the house and howled until their throats gave out, and Carolyn began to wake up with strange bruises blooming across her body, as if unseen hands had grabbed her while she slept. It was Carolyn who began to feel it the most, a heavy presence, always around her, watching, pressing on her chest when she tried to breathe, whispering her name from corners. And when she looked into the mirrors, she sometimes saw not her reflection, but another woman, pale, hollow-eyed, standing behind her, her lips moving though no sound came out. The family later learned that the land itself carried a history drenched in death. The house once belonged to the Arnold family, and according to local records, generations of tragedy unfolded there. Suicides, hangings, drownings, even a child murdered in the nearby creek, and among them was one name whispered with the most fear, Bathsheba Sherman, a woman accused of witchcraft in the 1800s, rumored to have sacrificed her own child to the devil, her body buried somewhere on the property, though no one could ever find the grave. As the days passed, the nights grew longer, heavier, filled with footsteps in the attic, the sound of someone weeping in the cellar, and Carolyn began to lose herself. Her voice changing, her face pale, her body trembling. She spoke of a woman who appeared at the edge of her bed whispering, "Get out, this is my house." And sometimes, the woman's hands would close around her throat, invisible but real enough to leave bruises that everyone could see. The Perrons reached out for help, and that's when Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived, experienced investigators of the paranormal, armed with faith, holy water, and a history of confronting darkness. But even they admitted later that what they found in the Conjuring house was unlike anything they had faced before, because it wasn't one spirit, it was many, all bound by something ancient and malevolent that fed on fear like a starving animal. Lorraine said the air was thick with sorrow, the kind that clings to your skin, and she saw dark figures moving between the rooms, whispering words from languages long forgotten, while Ed described the cellar as a pit of despair, where an unseen force seemed to pulse with hatred, making even the bravest investigators tremble. During one of the seances, Carolyn began to convulse, her eyes rolling back, her voice changing to something deep and guttural, mocking the prayers being said, laughing at the holy words. And then her body was lifted from the floor and thrown across the room, as if by an invisible wave of rage, her daughters screaming as Ed and Lorraine tried to drag her back to consciousness. But the entity wasn't done. It wanted her. It wanted all of them, and it made that very clear. The Warrens realized the house itself was a conduit, a wound between worlds that could not be closed easily. And though they performed rituals and prayers, they knew the darkness within those walls was older than Christianity, older than the land itself, something that had fed on centuries of blood and grief, something that became the house. After the seance, the Perrons begged for peace, but the haunting continued, shadows passing through their rooms, the stench of sulfur creeping in with the wind, objects moving by themselves, and whispers that called to the children, sometimes gently, sometimes with a growl. One night, Carolyn woke to the feeling of nails scraping down her back. Her hair pulled violently as a voice hissed in her ear, "She wants your soul." Her husband, Roger, wanted to leave, but they had nowhere to go, trapped in a home that seemed alive, breathing, watching, waiting. Even the investigators who returned later said the house seemed to resist them. Cameras malfunctioned, batteries drained in seconds, and once, during a recording, a deep voice was captured, low and mocking, saying, "You'll never leave." The family eventually did escape, but the scars remained, nightmares that followed them long after. Their daughters growing up with memories of unseen hands and sleepless nights, while the Warrens continued to speak of that farmhouse as one of the darkest cases of their lives, a place where good and evil were not ideas, but presences that could reach out and touch you. And yet, the house still stands. Investigators who visit today claim they still feel the same cold rush when crossing the threshold, as if something inside recognizes them, remembers them. And the new owners have reported shadows that move against the light, doors that open without wind, and voices that whisper when the night falls silent, telling stories that no one should ever hear. They say the basement remains the most dangerous place, where the energy is thick, heavy, where candles refuse to stay lit, and where the smell of burning hair sometimes fills the air before fading into silence, leaving only a faint hum, almost like breathing. Some believe Bathsheba was never the true source, that she too was only a vessel, another soul consumed by the same thing that has lived on that land for centuries, an ancient force that feeds on fear, that waits for new believers. Because every time someone tells the story, every time someone watches The Conjuring and whispers the name, the house stirs again, remembering the ones who dared to call its name aloud. And if you stand outside on a moonless night, just beyond the old stone wall, and listen carefully, you can still hear it. The creak of a door opening where no one lives, the faint sound of a woman weeping beneath the floorboards, and a whisper carried by the wind, a voice that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, saying softly, "Welcome home."